Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you. I feel like I have a lot of things to talk about today that won't bum you out. And that is so exciting for me because too often I feel like like the angel of death coming in every morning and just making everybody miserable. So this is something I'm starting to do that now too. So starting every sentence, every thought with so. It's ubiquitous now. It didn't used to be a thing. It's amazing how you pick up how something like that starts. I wish it to end, but I don't think it's going to. So I did see this post that was on the Huffington Post, but Ed, one of you guys, sent it to me and reminded me of it today. And I just want to pass this information along to you because it's empowering as heck, and it makes you feel good and makes you see that there are some really smart ways to battle the haters. There are smart ways to do it. And this particular piece talks about a tactic that was employed, as far as they know, for the first time 3 years ago in a relatively small Bavarian city, where neo-Nazis were planning a march to, I guess, honor Rudolf Hess, one of Hitler's inner circle, who is buried in this town. And the people of the town who didn't want these neo-Nazis marching in their town. And remember, this is Germany, so they can't have swastikas. They can't say Sieg Heil like you can in the United States. But they were clearly going to be Nazis, and they were Nazi sympathizers, and they were going to march. So rather than have crowds of townfolk jeering them, countering their demonstration with a demonstration of their own, they decided, some brilliant person decided, here's what we do. Instead, everyone who's opposed to these Nazis marching agree and pledge to donate, let's say, 10 cents or a penny or whatever, or euro, for every step marched by the neo-Nazis. And so it became what they called Nazis Against Nazis Walkathon. So that every time they put their foot on the ground, bang, the total of pledged money simply went up. And all of that money, of course, was going to counter them, was going to groups that fight hate, the groups that welcome refugees. And they even put banners up in the town welcoming the Nazis, saying, Nazis against Nazis, welcome. And they would, ahead of them on the street, they would write down how much money had already been raised by them for causes that they find appalling and hateful, working against themselves, so that every step they took was working against themselves. And at the end, the organizers of this wonderful counter demonstration passed out certificates to everybody and telling them that this is how much was raised, actually by the Nazis to fight the Nazis. It's brilliant stuff. Interestingly, it is a tactic that is already employed here in Pittsburgh on a daily basis, and it affords me an opportunity to tell you about it. Planned Parenthood, right over here on Liberty Avenue downtown, has a similar program called Pledge a Picketer. And they do it a little bit differently. What you do is you call up Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania, say, I want to pledge a picketer, because they have people outside their front door harassing people who come in and out all the time. So you can pledge, I think minimally, a dime for each picketer that shows up. They don't do steps. Each picketer that shows up for, let's say, every month. And so they keep a tally of how many picketers they've had throughout a month. Let's say they have 100 all together. You've pledged a dime. What would that be? $10? $100? $10. That's $10. You pledge 30 cents a picketer, you'd give $30. And also, so that the picketers know, Planned Parenthood keeps also a tally in their window, letting the picketers know every time you come here, come on, that's right, come on, we're making money. Pledge a picketer. But I just think it makes so much more sense to creatively take down these losers. And by doing it this way, you drive them crazy. You raise money, and you lower the chances that somebody's going to get killed, because you don't counter them in a hostile way. In fact, you welcome them happily because they're raising money for anti-Nazi charities. It's brilliant. And I wish a few folks around here in the resistance to all of this would start to emulate that kind of creative counter protest that does a hell of a lot more than just standing against them and risking, in fact, violence, injury, death, and potentially offering them video that they can employ so that a president can suggest that both sides were equally at fault. Whatever. I'm just saying, let's get smarter. These guys ain't brilliant, I'll tell you that. Extraordinary bunch of pathetic losers is really, I mean, if you were to do a sort of a mass psychology of these neo-Nazi types, they're just pathetic. They're pathetic. And they're acting out. Anyway. So, pledge a picketer over there at Planned Parenthood, or next time these SOBs want to march here in Pittsburgh, let's get smarter. Okay? That's all I'm saying. I had a thought last night. It came to me just out of the blue, and I scribbled it down. At first, I couldn't read my own writing, so I scribbled over the original writing. And it just wrote down, to remind me to talk to you about this, the impact of how our geography in this country has had an effect on our country for good and for ill. Now, our geography is such, of course, that we are almost an island, right? We are separated from Asia by a huge ocean. Huge. We are separated from Europe and Africa by a huge ocean. The only neighbors we have are to the north, Canadians, which are essentially, I don't know, like Americans. We speak the same language. Our cultures are very much the same. It's no big deal there, right? And the only other is Mexico, okay? So we have two borders, and only one is a border with a culture and country that is different from our culture and language. So the good news about that geography is that it has allowed us to be relatively free of war on our soil. Yeah? Relatively free. In the early days, of course, the Brits came twice. And then the bloodiest war, of course, the war we fought amongst ourselves, which we seem to be trying to redo now, the Civil War. So in terms of our national security, you could argue that our geography has been better than any wall. The Atlantic and Pacific are better than any wall Trump can build. But the negatives of our geography are that they have made us unaware that there are other people in this world, that there are different cultures, different ways of organizing one's political and social and national lives. It has allowed us to get cocky. We're the best. USA, USA, number one. And most of the people that fall into that are people who, frankly, don't get out much, right? They haven't traveled around the world. They haven't seen that other countries and the people in them are doing just fine and often better than USA. So I just think that we're an odd mix because America, by virtue of it having been the new land, this Eden that was found, we are a nation made up of all kinds of people who came across those oceans to us to form this country. So in that way, we're this wonderful stew, polyglot mix, a nation of immigrants. And that has given us a unique character. But it's strange. There has always been a part of us that is and loves the sense of isolation that our geography affords us. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but there's something to this. I know it. There's something to it. Getting into my hay fever season. There's something to this. And I think what we're seeing in the country right now is how our geography has been a negative. There are far too many people in this country who really know nothing about anything beyond their, noses or next door neighbor. And it breeds a kind of ignorance and an arrogance. Nothing worse than arrogance that is rooted in absolute ignorance. And we got a lot of that. So, just thinking about that. Geography. And I'm always laughing and saying Americans don't know anything about geography. I mean, actually, the voice that started the program is the voice of a guy named Alex Gordon, who happens to be sitting here right now. And I told Alex, since I can't talk to you guys yet, to feel free to jump in.
I just wanted to throw that in there. Germany also its geography plays a pretty big role in the way that its history has developed, because it's this massive country on the European continent, but it's surrounded by much smaller countries, and it's always kind of had this weird relationship to them, because it was all these different tribes and different groups, and then all of a sudden they become this huge thing, which made everybody else very nervous, and also made them feel very sort of threatened and paranoid.
And also, because those borders, there's so many. I mean, if I were to ask you again, as I said, we're not good at geography. Name the countries that border Luxembourg.
Liechtenstein.
or Liechtenstein, or name the countries that border Poland.
Yeah.
I mean, they all have so many other countries that are literally, on this line is one country and on that is the other. So there's a reason that Europe has known war.
It's like more conflict and also more ability to.
It's why they're multilingual.
You have to get along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre, and the whole idea after the horror of World War II of trying to make Europe make all these little nations more like states and have a European Union, sort of like the United States. That's a good idea, and it's worked thus far. Yeah. There has not been war between European nations since. Since.
Right.
But. So geography. Yeah. I was sort of blown. I was looking at maps a lot when I was in the Middle East. That's another thing. I mean, if you go to Israel, my God, you can literally stand, someplace, and over the hill right there, if I walked up it, and I started walking down, I'd be in Syria. Or just a little bit over that away, Lebanon. Or when I'm in the south of Israel, in Eilat, I look across the Red Sea, and there's Jordan. It's just right there. Hop, skip, jump. You could swim it. Well, some people could swim it. I couldn't. And then if I go to the very tippy-tip southern part of Eilat and look down the coast, there's Saudi Arabia. There's Egypt. Well, these people, it's a totally different reality than we have. And it's had, obviously, an impact on us, on our psyches, on how we think of ourselves. And as I said, I think it's a mixed bag. I do. Okay, so I have one other thing that has absolutely nothing to do with any of this other stuff. I came upon this, I don't know, during my absence, and I just thought it was fascinating. Imagine this. Someone who is a genius artist, musician, author, dancer, whatever. They can never experience their genius like we do. I mean, it's weird. You're a writer, okay? Herman Melville writing Moby Dick could never read Moby Dick. He could never have the same excitement of like turning the page to see what happens next, and maybe Moby Dick's not the best, but you get my point. The author, cannot enjoy their work like everybody else enjoys their work. The Beatles cannot know what it was like to play the White Album for the first time. They cannot discover that which they themselves created. And they cannot listen or even watch a tape, let's say, of themselves in a disinterested way. They cannot know and experience the joy that we on the receiving end of their genius experience. Now, you could argue, yeah, but we can't experience the joy of the creation. But I thought it was interesting to imagine that because there's truth in it, right? And Jimi Hendrix never really saw the Jimi Hendrix experience. Never really could experience Jimi Hendrix like we did. So, the loneliness of the genius, the loneliness of the creator. And so that's why when I was reading this review the other day and came upon the first line of Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. I'm going to read it to you, okay? Because you wonder why people love Jane Austen so much. Listen to the first sentence, the brilliance of it, the smartness of it, the wit of it. First sentence of Pride and Prejudice. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So she notes that if you're a guy and you're single and you got money, well, everybody else in the town, in the neighborhood, is going to be wanting to get you a wife. But even, you might think I'm getting nuts here, but even the rhythm of that sentence, may I say it again and listen to the rhythmic nature of it. Jane Austen was never able to have the joy that I do in repeating this sentence to you. It's clever, it's true, and it's melodic. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Okay, I'll stop. But then I thought, Jane Austen, don't you wish that, she's been dead for 200 years. Don't you wish often that, she could know that right 200 years after her death, there's this woman in the colonies in the New World that is talking on this gizmo to a lot of other people and is reading the first line of her that she wrote. Does your head ever get all mixed up like that? Mine does. Anyway, Jane, if you're listening, I want you to know, because I wish you could, take the pleasure in knowing that your genius continues to give pleasure. Wow. It's why I ride around in my car with Ben Franklin. You want to show these people what they wrought, what they helped to start off. I only show them the good stuff. I don't show them I never watch the news with Ben Franklin. I take him in my car a lot, and we note things. Dorothea, I'm trying to get you. I don't know why it won't come up here. Why is that? Alex, if I'm pressing on this, shouldn't it come up over there? Hello? I would like to read this. Hello? I would like to read that. Okay. Bang. What'd you do?
It was trying to highlight two at once.
Oh. Well, thank you. What would we do without these young folks? All right, Dorothea writes, I would agree that the geography of this country puts us at a disadvantage. If you live in Belgium, every weekend you could spend time in France, Luxembourg, Germany, Switzerland, and with little effort in London. Here in the United States, unless you're a border state, you've got to jump on an airplane in order to leave the country. We are essentially a landlocked country, and consequently, we have landlocked attitudes toward the rest of the world. I would absolutely agree. And you look at I'm thinking of the British and I'm thinking of the Japanese. Those are two nations, both that have known great empire and great power. They are both relatively small islands, right? And they too have these insular cultures. It's not surprising that Britain is the one that did Brexit, that wanted out, because they'd always seen themselves as singular. And the Japanese culture is just, mind-blowingly island-centric. I mean, just the rest of the world. They're very, 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 very different. It's a strength and it's a weakness. Oh, Nancy, listen to me and watched season 1, episode 1 of Black Mirror. And she said, all I can say is, Jesus! Spelled Jaysus, all caps. Well, I hope that means you liked it. It's really something that we shouldn't do too much of, point people toward things we've enjoyed, because you don't know. We're all different. And Alex, you haven't seen it.
I have.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yeah.
Well, don't you think it's unbelievably on the money, brilliant?
Yeah, so actually somebody told me when they recommended it not to start with that one.
Why?
Because it was too much, they told me. And so I started elsewhere. They thought that I would be turned off. I wasn't. I would have
Turned off? It totally got me.
Yeah.
So I've only seen one other. I've then watched the next one, which was also mind-blowing.
What happens in that one?
These people are just living and they ride bicycle. That was mind-blowing. These are visions of, well, in that case, visions of a future that is frightening.
Yeah, and
And
they're like
they're all
extrapolated
different
from things that are happening now and taken to an extreme, basically.
One of them one or two or three or four are going to prove prescient. Just like science fiction invariably becomes fact.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's also, I've always thought it's kind of interesting that, like, we have like these gadgets now, like MacBooks or whatever, things that Apple makes that seem like really futuristic, but that imagination of making technology is the same imagination as in the 1950s coming up with gadgets for people to have in cartoons.
True. Yeah.
It's the same human.
right. But so Black Mirror is like a Twilight Zone for our time. It's right. It's taking a piece of our reality and then, imagining where would this potentially lead. I really think the one that I think is mind blowing. I think it's absolutely believable. I think it could be a documentary.
Yeah.
Black Mirror. Okay. Other things to watch. The Eclipse. So there we go. So it's a placeholder. It's the new You got to find these things that let your mouth catch up to your brain or something. So gives you a little time. Gives you a little time. The Eclipse. I can't get into it. I mean, it happens. I know we don't see. I vaguely remember seeing one with a box on my head when I was a kid, and I didn't. It didn't blow me away because I had a box on my head, and I was just looking at a shadow. And now, I mean, if I do it, I'm just going to do what? I'll get a spaghetti drainer. I'll just look down at the ground and through the strainer, and I'll look at all, those are a million little pinholes, and I'll look at the little crescents that it forms. But the fact that you can't really look at it without destroying your eyes, it's like a tease to me. And all the folks who are like schlepping all these ways, I don't know. I can't quite get into it. But I did come across something that Neil deGrasse Tyson suggested to all who are going to look, kinda. And that is this. And God bless him for saying it, even though most people won't listen. He says, do not have your smartphone with you. Do not see this thing, experience it with a camera in between you and it. Do not do what we do all the time now. Because you're not there then. And then I always look at people who are, doing that now. Every experience they have to, and then of course they have to, hey, look, I am in it. I am here. What is the purpose of that? I'll tell you, where every experience resides in your memory. Your memory, not your phone's memory. And it can't be in your memory if you aren't wholly there. Put the friggin' phones down. But I want a record of what. Hey, let me tell you something. Plenty of professionals are going to be taking a picture of exactly what you see. So, if you want to see it later, there'll be something better than whatever the hell you were going to get on your phone, right? Stop it. Well, anyway, let's not get us into my fears about what we're becoming that we're now becoming this. That's all we are. Okay. See, I'd rather be scared today not of neo-Nazis in North Korea and Donald Trump. I'd like to be scared of where technology is taking us, because I'm always scared of that. Okay, back to your input. Lynn writes, Milt, not sure if you've heard the NPR story on the opening line of Pride and Prejudice. There's an NPR story on the opening line of Pride? No, I haven't. It's worth, so it's 5 minutes to take to, thank you. Thank you. No, but I'll listen later.
I'll tweet it.
Huh?
I'll tweet it from here.
Okay, thank you. All you handy folk. I've just been putting down the phone, and now the phone is allowing you to share that with everybody. Okay. Thanks, Milton. Denise writes, Lynn, I visited my son when he was studying abroad in Jordan a couple of years ago. One of the absolute highlights was driving through Wadi Rum. It was spectacular. Did you visit it? No, I didn't. I only had one day in Jordan, and it was for one purpose. And what I went for, I needed 5 days to do just that. You know, these countries are amazing. I went just for the day to Petra in Jordan, and I don't even know how to begin. That is that mysterious, bizarre wonder of the world in which people who very little is known about, but probably a few hundred years before Jesus came on the scene, they carved a city out of the stone, out of the mountains. And it's, well, famous in Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones. those scenes, even with, the boulder. There is, all of that is from Petra. Petra is awesome. I can't even begin. But driving to it, I think we might have gone by. Well, I don't know. The guide pointed out that over there, because the landscape is so weird. And so when he said The Martian was filmed right over there, you could see it. Ah, yeah. Desert, but with these strange shapes every once in a while sort of emerging. Lawrence of Arabia was filmed right there where we were. I think one of the Star Wars was mostly filmed also there. It's mind-blowing. It really is. Brooke writes, did we trade Celine for Alex during that break? Also, when Alex talks, I can't really hear him.
All right, I'll
Huh? Well, can't you just turn it up? Yeah, I couldn't hear you very well either, and you're sitting right here. He's worth hearing. Look, during that break, so much crap happened that I can't even begin to tell you. Since this is a very temporary thing that we're doing, yeah, Celine, was relieved of shepherding me, and Alex, Celine, these are the guys whose stuff you read in the city paper. I mean, they got jobs. So, in as much as they are taken away from their jobs to allow me to pontificate, it's difficult. It's a very small staff of brilliant young people.
That's true. So yeah, I'll be here for a couple weeks. Yeah, as long as you're here.
As long as I'm here, yeah. And then they're gonna ship me out to at this point undisclosed location.
Yeah, you got to keep teasing that. It's very good.
Well, I know, but it is. It's out. It ain't in Pittsburgh. It is not in Pittsburgh.
I know.
I'm being exiled. Mm. And wait till you hear.
It's from a bunker.
So anyway, Celine's here somewhere probably. I mean, we could. Maybe she'll walk by. We'll get her to walk by, but yeah. She's doing more important work. Alex has been judged to be capable of doing this, and the paper won't suffer. Roger writes, I just tuned in a few minutes ago, and maybe somebody already commented about this, but the gentleman with you sounds a lot like Sulu from Star Trek.
George Takei. I think so.
George who?
Takei.
Oh, yeah, George Takei. You do? Say something.
Hello.
No, but that's not how you normally talk. You sound like...
I did stay up kind of late last night, so my voice is kind of low right now.
It is lower than normal, but you have a low voice to start with. I don't know. I don't hear it, but then it's not like... I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't recognize that voice.
No. Okay, so... God dang it. Thanks, Marcy. I missed what channel Black Mirror is on. Is it Netflix? BBC produced, Netflix, although I have Comcast, and if I go to On Demand, and you have one of those things where you can just talk into your phone, if I just say, Black Mirror, it pops up without going to Netflix. Don't ask me. I don't understand anything anymore, okay? But try to see it. It's something. So during that eclipse, the temperature drops as much as 13 degrees. Did you know that? And the wind picks up. Yeah, you can't screw with the norm. You can't have the sun disappear in the middle of the afternoon and not have things happen. And I got some of this stuff from the science section of the New York Times. The animal world gets freaked. It's not normal. And even in our own bodies, things start happening. proteins, neurons that we don't realize are synchronized to the sun's rhythms, they go bonkers. Crap happens. I mean, so you don't even have to be looking at the thing. They have found that wheat and beans and peas in the ground, actually the rate of photosynthesis slows way, way down. The stomata. Remember what a stoma is? Come on. They're like little holes, I think. Little something is like pores. The stomata of some plants remain open, like they're shocked, speechless. So, I mean, plants around will be like, what? And a sudden change, there's something called an eclipse wind. And also, temperature will drop by as much as 13 degrees. The very chemistry of the air will change. And you can imagine, I mean, if you didn't have the New York Times science section to tell you, first of all, that it's coming and it's going to happen at this time, and you're just a schmo living on this globe, and all of a sudden that eclipse happens, that would scare the bejeebers out of you, wouldn't it? So, and what if, I didn't hear anybody say it, but what if it's a cloudy day? Then nobody gets to see anything, I suppose. Yeah. The assumption is it won't be a cloudy day. I don't know what the weather forecast is. Excuse me. Okay. I'm really trying to avoid, forgive me, but I mean, come on. I just want to say the parents of the murdered girl, Heather Heil? Huh? Higher. I could no more do what they did. I would be, I can't even, I don't even get it. Maybe they're still in shock. I could not do what they did. I just wanted to say that. I mean, I looked with it. It was a cross of between admiration and concern. Like, are you sure you're okay? I mean, like, are you like tamping this down so that you can get through this? And then what happens? And oh my God, I don't know. Okay. Henri writes, go away. I mean, I'm sorry, Henri, I'm not talking to you. I agree. He agrees about leaving the photography of the eclipse to the pros. The eclipse will be covered live in ways that no other eclipse has been covered. After it's over, every news outlet will show you detailed photos you could never imagine, let alone photograph yourself. I would also remind people, he says, that although your cell phone is relatively safe, the sensor on your traditional cameras could be damaged by shooting directly into the sun. If you want to have fun during the eclipse, this is what I was going to suggest. Watch your animals. I was going to think, I'm going to watch with my cats. I want to see their reaction. And he says, watch your animals get confused. Or instead of looking up, look down. That's what I'm going to be looking down and looking at my cats. Look down and see the crescent shadows that will be cast on the ground. Again, assuming that it's a sunny day. I just don't know why I can't get as into it as some folks. They happen, full eclipses happen every year somewhere. Again, typical Americans. It's just because it's happening here that we're making it sound like, this is a once in a lifetime. I mean, there are people who have seen millions of total, I exaggerate, so they have total eclipses because they go to where the eclipse is, is going to be visible. Liz writes, when you mentioned technology being one of the scariest things we're facing as a society, it made me think of this Radio Lab podcast. God, you guys are sending me such great stuff. When am I going to have time to do it, to listen? Highly recommend listening to it. Frightening prospects for the future. I don't need any more. Anyone who's listened to me knows that 20 years ago, I was already starting with we are going to robotize ourselves. It's over. Quoting my son, who, when he was 7 or 8, said, Mom, you're lucky. At least you're never going to have to live under robot overlords. And I remember laughing at the time, and then his words would not get out of my head. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, he's absolutely right. Okay, so if I want to scare myself silly, that was another thing my brilliant son said about terrifying things. Maybe I'll save it for Halloween, because you're supposed to scare yourself at Halloween. But he came home, maybe he was in 2nd grade, 3rd grade. He said, Mom, I figured out a really scary Halloween costume. You know what I'm going to go as? I said, what? And he said, a Jim Crow law. Is that weird? I thought it was brilliant. He doesn't like it when I talk about him, so I'll shut up. Anyway, back to Liz here. So this is what she wants me to listen to. Simon Adler takes us down a technological rabbit hole of strangely contorted faces and words made out of thin air. And a wonderland full of computer scientists, journalists, and digital detectives forces us to rethink even the things we see with our very own eyes. Oh, and by the way, we decided to put the dark secrets we learned into action and unleash this on the internet. All right. I will steel myself and give it a shot. But I really am genuinely freaked by where technology is taking us. And now everyone initially thought this was such a great democratizing force. Why, look at the Arab Spring. It wouldn't have happened without social media. Yeah, right, okay. And look where that went. Because ultimately, the people with the power will always, I think the internet and technology will only afford them more tools to enslave us. That's my bet. I wouldn't bet against it. There, making you miserable. So I used to think the 60s were like this extraordinary time to be a young person because so much was happening. And Alex, you're a young person, and look what's happening to your country.
Yeah.
Are you sickened? Are you frightened? Are you fighting mad? What's your reaction? Because you seem like sort of a laid-back person to me.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'm 30 now. I was 14.
That's still young.
I know. I'm just saying. So I was okay. 9/11 was like my second day of high school.
Okay.
Barack Obama was the first person I voted for.
Wow.
I graduated into the recession. So a lot of these big things that have happened maybe over the past 15 years or so have been pretty big parts of my life too.
So 9/11, the first black president.
Oh, and 2 wars, right? When I was in high school and college.
And wars.
Yeah.
Shock and awe and all that.
And also growing up in the 90s and having that sort of sense of, I don't know, sort of being beyond all that. And that everything was sort of looking back at Vietnam, at Nixon, and stuff like that. And it's so far behind
But
us.
that's ancient history to you, isn't it?
Right, but when I was, when I was a kid in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, with 9/11, basically everything that's happened since then, it's like, oh, no, that doesn't.
A lot of the rage and anger, the white backlash, the white resentment that we see now playing out and literally threatening our existence as a great democracy, perhaps, really comes from the 60s. It comes from the changes, the incredible changes that people were for. The fact that, the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, And then after the gay rights, for God's sake, and the lives and the ordering of the universe that most people knew, the fact that it was upended, I mean, it turns out that a whole ton of Americans have never, ever reconciled themselves to those changes.
But weren't the
when
70s,
I was young.
Yeah, but weren't the 70s, I mean, didn't that see a lot of fallout from those changes in the 60s?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
domestic
the terrorism and,
Oh, it
crime.
it was amazing. Yeah. And you live through times and you think, what, the Symbionese Liberation Army, Patty Hearst, like what? Yeah. It was a weird time.
Yeah. I had the opportunity, not to self-promote, but I interviewed Jeffrey Toobin. He wrote a book about Patty Hearst. And when I asked him about it, he was a little bit too young for Patty Hearst, but he was a big Watergate nut.
Yeah.
As like a teenager, and I remember thinking, you were a nut for Watergate? Like, that's something. I mean, obviously he's a smart guy. But
I have to tell you, Watergate, when Watergate was I was a young married woman living on a pig farm outside of Madison, Wisconsin. Right. My husband was a law student. We sat. We watched we were not alone. The country was sitting in front of their televisions watching these hearings. It was frightening. Yeah. I remember thinking and arguing. I was afraid there was going to be a coup, that Nixon would refuse to somehow leave, that he would stage a coup, and those fears might come back. Although quite clearly with this nitwit, the military ain't going to go along with Trump. Yeah. That is quite clear. You can tell the heads of every branch of the military are appalled by this creep. Yeah. Right?
Well, it goes back to when I was in college and there would be like fights at bars or whatever, and I would learn that the people who are instigating it, they're really drunk. You can't really you can't burn them. You can't make fun of them as they're walking away. They need to think that they've won somehow. And that's kind of the way I think of Trump. That he can't feel like he lost.
Ever.
Yeah. So however he goes, it's like, kid's gloves. He's just got to he's got to be able to justify to himself that he did something right.
Well, maybe we'll help him and just stick him in jail.
Yeah. That'd be easier.
I read somewhere today that one of his business buddies is already telling friends that he figures the business buddy, is going to end up in jail because they're looking into some of the financial aspects of Trump's great empire and the money laundering that regularly goes on. And apparently this guy is very much involved with that sort of thing. He's already got Mueller's people breathing down his neck, and he has told close friends, I figure that I'm going to jail, and I got a feeling Donald is too. Wow. We'll see. Interesting times. I'm so sorry you guys can't talk to me. Oh, well. Okay, let me just keep on. All right. Yeah, we forget, all of us, that we are formed by the times we grow up in, by the singular moments that, have an impact on our psyches, our senses of our nation and the world and blah, 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 blah. And like my parents' experience of the Depression and of World War II and McCarthyism and the Cold War and nuclear, blah, 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 blah. And all of this, it shapes you, changes you. And we forget that like a 30-year-old like you, the one president that you really know and remember was Barack Obama. And now you get another one. Donald Trump. Isn't that amazing to go from that elegant, smart, thoughtful human being to this buffoon.
But still, I remember, Obama's experience following Bush. That was a big contrast, too. Because...
I'm not hearing it.
You're not hearing me?
Oh.
Did you?
I'm hearing you, but not as much as... Okay.
Well, just growing up as a teenager and, despising George Bush, and it just felt like such this big moment being in college and casting my first vote. And it really, you mentioned the Arab Spring, and it's so weird to go back to that time and
right.
all these things going on. Be like, wow, things are really turning around.
Things are really...
And it
and
makes
no.
you feel really stupid for thinking.
Yeah, I know. I remember thinking when I saw the Arab Spring thing and everybody was getting so excited thinking, this is going to get ugly and ugly. And I remember my brother saying about Syria. He was saying, Assad, it'll never happen in Syria. He said Assad would kill every Syrian if that's the only way to stay in. And that was long before he started killing almost every Syrian so he could stay in power. Okay. Damn it. Okay. Susie writes, will only afford more tools to unemployed. What, technology? Oh, the internet. Well, there's not going to be anything for us to do. We won't be able to drive cars. The robots will do it. God, I read this horrible thing where, so in 10 years, you'll want to go somewhere, you'll just, punch a little button and a driverless car will pop up right where you are within a minute, and you'll get in, and a voice will say something like, "Hi, Lynn. I just want to remind you, you have a 3:00 dentist appointment today." Something like that. I will lose my mind. This is why I do not want to be around for this. I can't stand it when people, and I have a few friends, when they do that, Alexa, is that her name, right? Yeah. Alexa, play some music. No, Alexa, and I just want to, I want to pummel them. Do you use that kind of stuff?
No.
I will not. I have never spoken to that friggin' thing on my phone, Siri.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I screw up and she says, "Shut up!"
And the scary thing is that it gets harder and harder to opt out. So you and I can say, well, we're not going to use that feature. We take advantage of the apps that we like, the technology that we like. But at a certain point, the technology becomes so ubiquitous that you kind of get pulled in.
I know. You can't avoid it. I hate it.
I'm sure there are people who held off buying smartphones for a long time, and at this point, what are you going to get? A flip phone?
I was at a reunion of people who worked at WTAE-TV in the 80s and 90s, and Stan Savran, a great sports guy, actually, he bragged that I still have a flip phone. And he was proud of it.
Of course.
But...
a holdout.
A flip phone. And I know people who refuse to have a computer. Still. At some point, though, it's true. Then you're opting out of everything. Everything. Susie writes, would you ever do a show on how many people here are un- or underemployed in their 50s and 60s who are not counted on the unemployment rolls because they've run out of unemployment compensation or owned a business that went belly up and couldn't claim unemployment compensation? The numbers must be astronomical. I run into people like me every day. How do we count these people? I don't know. And as usual, the brilliant leadership in corporate America and political America are not thinking ahead. They only react to strife. So a whole lot more people are going to have to end up literally not knowing how to feed themselves and clothe and shelter themselves. before they will realize that we're actually gonna end up having to do something like a minimum income that is doled out to everybody. We're just gonna have to do it. I'm sure the Republicans will love that idea. All right, let's see. What time we got here? Oh my God! It's over. It's done. It's completely finished. Kaput. And we got through without talking much about you-know-who and them and all that horror. And I pat myself on the back for that. And I haven't even used up 15 minutes telling you how I got hung up in Israeli security on my trip, which is a story I would like to share with you at some point. It was interesting. Interesting. Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you guys, I'll be back tomorrow. I don't think, are we ever going to get them able to call? It's not going to happen. These guys are stringing me along, making it sound like, oh, yeah, maybe, who knows, we could this or that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, right? Tell me the truth. Tell the old lady the truth. Okay. Carlo, not going to happen, right? It's not looking good. So I might not hear your voices until we move to the undisclosed location outside of the city. I'm having trouble saying goodbye to you. Okay. Goodbye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.